And good evening, Deborah and Elan. It's so nice being here once again, the IAC Summit. So thank you, first of all, for attending. Deborah, in the past year, we've seen probably the worst wave of anti-Semitism in 80 years. How challenging is it to be the U.S. envoy for combating anti-Semitism in the midst of that?
Very.
Thank you very much.
It's, you know, even before October 7th, there was a rise in anti-Semitism. And my position was elevated, nothing to do with me. Before President Biden nominated me, it was elevated by the Congress in a bipartisan effort to the rank of ambassador. A signal from the Senate, because it was the Senate that did this, a signal from the Senate that this is a serious issue. But that was in 21, you know? And then came, and we felt like we were making some progress. One of the things that attracted me to taking the job, I had a very cushy life as a professor, didn't teach too much, wrote my books. No one told me what I could and couldn't say, so, but was to come and work on this issue and to come and work on the Abraham Accords. And then, of course, came October 7th, and what was a surge became a tsunami. What was a rainstorm became a hurricane, and it's been trying ever since.
So, Elan, as the former U.S. envoy for combating anti-Semitism, can you point out where lies the thin line between anti-Israel views and anti-Semitism?
Sure. Well, first of all, I want to say, and I said this publicly in 2021, President Biden could not possibly have made a better choice than Deborah Lipstadt. We were friends before. It's true, she's amazing. We were on panels together when I was in government, and we did the circuit, and I was just so pleased by the choice, and you're doing a great job. So I will say this, and I think it's very, very simple. You know, when I was, you know, the lead diplomat on this issue for the United States, and I was in European capitals, and maybe you had this experience as well, I would meet with foreign leaders, and they would say, well, yeah, we're fighting anti-Semitism and we're determined to fight anti-Semitism. And then we would talk about Islamist anti-Semitism or far-left anti-Semitism or anti-Zionism. They would say, well, actually, that's complicated. That's complicated. And I would hear this a lot. Actually, I think we hear it a lot less today than we used to. But what I would tell these foreign leaders is, no, it's actually not complicated at all. Hatred of the Jewish state is hatred of the Jewish people. It's really very simple. And it's always been that way, by the way. Anti-Semites throughout history have always focused on the chief manifestations of Jewish life in the world. Since 1948, there's a Jewish state, but before that it was a Jewish community, or it was a Jewish idea, or it was a Jewish movement, or it was Jewish institutions. So it's very simple. Now, of course, the nuance of your question is, when people criticize Israel, how do you determine whether criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic or not? And for that, we actually have a very powerful tool to do that. It's the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition. It's a very, very powerful tool. IAC, by the way, has played a very prominent role in having the IAC adopted and implemented by states across the country. And what's very powerful about the IRA definition is that it captures not only traditional anti-Semitism, but also anti-Zionism. And so denying the Jewish people the right to self-determination is an example of anti-Semitism. Equating Israel to Nazi Germany is an example. Subjecting Israel to double standards to which no other democracy is held is an example. And so really I think that's a very powerful tool for doing it. And I know actually I have to say again to credit my friend Deborah, you've really been a very powerful voice in favor of use of the IRA definition around the world. And I think that's the right thing to do. And we have bipartisan agreement on that.
So I want to ask you both, did a wave of anti-Zionism and hatred towards Israel post-October 7 came as a surprise to you too?
Yes and no. I was shocked by the degree, but not surprised, because as Elan was saying, we have seen so much anti-Semitism over millennia. It's like a virus. It mutates. It finds the right place, it finds the right way. It comes from the right, it comes from the left, it comes from Christians, it comes from Muslims, it comes from Jews, it comes from atheists. And when I was before the Senate in my confirmation hearings, I was asked, which do I think is worse? And I said, I didn't say this, but had it been a Jewish crowd, I would have said, Shalom, if you had asked Shalom Aleichem that question, he would have said, that's like asking me, do I want to have cholera in Odessa or dysentery in Kyiv? Neither, thank you, you know. It's bad from wherever it comes. I want to give some good news because things are difficult. And I think there's to give you some chizuk, some strengthening. And I was talking to Elan about this earlier. We've accomplished something very, very important at the State Department. And I've been able to do what I do because I have the support of people like Elan and my predecessors, and because it's a bipartisan effort. But under the Biden-Harris administration, we have, and I want you all to remember this, Google it, ask Mrs. Google, and you'll find it easily. Global guidelines for countering anti-Semitism. Global guidelines for countering anti-Semitism. I got the question, as I'm sure Elan did, but even more so after October 7th, Attorney General of one of our major allies came to my office. Now, diplomats come see me, foreign ministers, I go see them, but attorney generals who's spending one day in Washington usually doesn't come to the State Department to see a special envoy, even at the level of ambassador. And it was clear, he said, we have a problem of anti-Semitism, what should we do? And I heard this question over and over again. And I knew what could be done, you know what can be done, not to solve it, but to address it. So we put together in the State Department what we call the global guidelines. It's 10, we started with 10 because we wanted Aseret HaDibrot. We ended with 12, but it's the Shvatim, you know, it's the 12 tribes. Very simple. If you look at these global guidelines, you will see they are very straightforward. Leaders have to speak out. That's leaders of countries, leaders of universities. Don't politicize, right, left, Islamic, Christian, Jewish, atheist. If it's anti-Semitism, it's wrong. Use the IRA definition. Fight online anti-Semitism and live as Jews. Be proud and live as Jews. But when you Google this, what will make you feel good, it's only 700 words. There's never been a document that's come out of the State Department that's short. Look at the end. We have 42 countries that have signed it, have embraced it. Some of the countries have not been so great on these issues, but now the Jews in that country, other countries, can go and say, you adopted this, live by it. So I think it's a big thing, and it's a bipartisan effort, and I, as part of this administration and with the support of people like Elan and others, have been very proud to be part of it.
Elan, post-October 7, were you surprised of what we see?
Well, you know, like Deborah said, anti-Semitism has been increasing geometrically, I would say. And so, sure, I mean, maybe the extent of it was surprising, but if you see what has happened, I mean, when you look at this idea of far-left intersectional anti-Semitism that justifies the most monstrous conduct among certain classes of people who are deemed marginalized and allows for no legitimacy on the part of those classes of people who are deemed to be oppressors, which of course is a racist and horribly destructive ideology, that's not new. I mean, when you look at the Durban Conference in 2001, which was an obscenity, I mean, Tom Lantos, Democratic member of Congress, the only member of Congress who was a Holocaust survivor, went to Durban and was aghast, and he said, I haven't seen this kind of anti-Semitism since Nazi Germany. And that was a far-left orgy of anti-Semitic hatred at Durban that basically clothed Jew hatred in the language and the ethics of social justice. And from there, it went viral, and it just increased and increased and increased. You know, Adam, in the introduction, mentioned I was the international president of AEPI, and I can tell you, I've been dealing with this on campuses on 180 campuses. Dealing with this, seeing students on the front line, this isn't new. It started even in the first Intifada, but in the second Intifada, it was vicious anti-Semitism on campus. And so am I entirely surprised that the events of October 7th, which saw Jews butchered in ways that we haven't seen since the Holocaust, would ignite this this global Jew-hating fest? No, not particularly. I think it was in the making, and those seeds were sown. And by the way, a lot of us in the Jewish world, a lot of Jewish organizations kind of were asleep at the wheel and didn't really see this coming. And now the good news, and by the way, I say that not to cast blame. The good news is that today, we all see it. We all get it. We all see how severe it is. Nobody is confused anymore about how profound this problem is. And that's actually a good thing, because that means we can work together and actually solve the problem.
Go ahead.
I just want to add one thing, because you asked the question earlier on the difference between anti-Semitism and anti-Israel. And I think you're asking the wrong people. The people you have to ask that question to are the people who went and defaced the statue of Anne Frank, the people who burned a synagogue in Montreal, the people who stopped people going into a synagogue in Los Angeles. Don't ask, they have made it clear. They have made it clear that in their minds, there is no difference between hatred of Israel and hatred of Jews. So while we want to, there are times where you can be critical of Israel, and criticism of Israeli policy, the national sport of Israel is criticism of the government. It's not football, it's not, it's not kadaregel, it's criticism. But when it crosses the line into questioning the right of Israel to exist, when it crosses the line into anti-Semitic tropes, it's anti-Semitism, pure and simple. And when it attacks Jews in the rest of the world, that's anti-Semitism.
And if I may add, after October 7th, there was a feeling around the world that Israel is weaker. And in the...
You want a beeper?
I can give you a few. This feeling held up to this week, maybe, but that brought many people around the world to feel that you can attack Jewish people and Jews as well. And if there is one thing that is within the basis of this organization, is to strengthen Israel and to strengthen the bonding between the US and Israel, and to make sure that we're safe on both sides of the Atlantic.
Both sides of the Atlantic, and as Elan said, both sides of the aisle. We cannot let Israel become a partisan issue. Israel is something that is in concert with American ideals, with democracy. I have talked, I see people in the White House and the State
Deborah,
Department.
not only Israel and Jewish people.
Jewish people, without doubt.
There is doubt in America currently.
Well, I think that we've got to hone that message that when you support Israel, when you fight anti-Semitism, you're fighting for American ideals. George Washington said it over 200 years ago when he wrote to the Jews of Rhode Island that this country will give bigotry no sanction and hatred no room. I'm misquoting it, but bigotry no sanction. Anti-Semitism, George Washington was saying, is against America.
So since our time is up, and before someone beeps me, Elan, Deborah, I want to thank you both.
Thank you.
For being with us. Best of luck, Deborah. Thank you.